Hey, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. My next guest is a regular, Jeremy Rosenthal. He's my go-to lawyer friend for all these legal things. And before we get into the Trump trial, because you know that's what I want to ask you about in earnest.
Okay.
Is there any legal action I can take against an unknown coworker? Because someone keeps absolutely destroying the bathroom, and I've had it. I don't know if I can get a cease and desist or if there's some sort of restraining order, but it smells like someone is going and doing their business on the floor next to the toilet and then pouring diesel fuel on it and setting fire to it. And if I can confirm that, I need to come to you with a lawsuit. Is there anything you can do for me?
Yeah, let's get on that, man. I was going to say, we ought to be able to find a way to capture that odor and then let the jury experience the terror that you must be having every day. That's a winner.
Yeah, I could take like a mayonnaise jar up here and just cap it in the stallers. I don't know. It's really bad. Jeremy, let's talk business though. The Trump trial's back on. So I was just reading the captions while I'm doing the show, and they're like, "Hey, the prosecution's doing their closing arguments," and then the caption said, "Okay, they're taking a break." And the closing arguments for the prosecution are 1/3 done. That seemed awfully specific. How would they know that or announce that?
Probably because the judges got everybody on a timer, and I think they usually give the same amount of time to each side, and then if one side runs over, then typically they'll give the other side a little bit. So that part of it can be fairly predictable, but I mean, they're actually staying late today, which is crazy. I didn't think they did that in this court. But, yeah, I mean, you got a 3 or 4 week trial, and there's just a lot to go over. Not surprising that it's taken a while.
Well, do they do that often, put a time limit or time stamp on it?
That's right. A judge has a lot of ability to control the case, to control these types of things. So the judge can give the parties a certain amount of time, and typically what the judge will do is the judge will ask the parties, how much time do y'all need to argue here, right? If it's some type of in a white collar case where you're sifting through thousands and thousands of documents, I mean, if the judge says, I'm going to give you 3 hours prosecution, you know that the defense is going to get 3 hours. That is a full day of court. Right there. So I would imagine it's somewhere in that time range. If you're talking about a murder case, you're talking about an assaultive case, it might be common to get an hour to close, maybe 30 minutes to close, which it seems like a lot, but to a lawyer who likes to talk a lot.
Bro, what takes so long? What takes 3 hours to make your case?
Well, you've seen the movies. I mean, you got to make people cry. I mean, you've got to have that moment.
Yeah, but it never takes 3 hours in the movies. And in the movies, they like walk around and they're like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. And what little court experience that I've observed, they usually stay at the podium and they don't get to walk around and like put their elbow on the jury box. Does anybody ever get to be dramatic like that? Is that what's happening today?
It depends on the courtroom. And I don't know, because there's no cameras in there, I don't know how it's set up. But the courtrooms in the Metroplex, you will be very happy to know that the lawyers, we can roam around. And again, we can in Rockwall, by the way, Rockwall has the American Airlines Center of courthouses. Each juror has their own screen right in front of them, which can be kind of hard if you have a PowerPoint as a lawyer, because the jurors aren't looking at you, they're looking at the PowerPoint. But no, that most of our courts are free range. But again, yeah, some of the federal courts, some of the more formal ones, you got to stay at the podium, and that just kind of makes it boring. But anyway, to each their own.
Well, what's going on in Trump's case? Are they walking around, ladies and the gentlemen of the jury, I implore you, all that stuff, or are they at the podium?
There's a lot of exhibits that they're going through. I know that, so I think they're probably stationary and pointing. Again, I'll have to go back to the cartoon artist and kind of see how he lays that out. I'm told that this is kind of a cramped sort of a setting. I know that it's the judges. The judge's bench kind of blocks the witness's view of the defense table, which is a little weird. But I mean, you know that if they asked me how to design a courtroom, well, they've never asked me to do that. Nor would they. But yeah, but I imagine it's pretty stationary because you're going through a lot of documents. You're pointing at a lot of things. You're highlighting things. I mean, this is not the case where you're showing, okay, the blood splattered here, and then here's the tire tread. You're not doing a whole lot of that in this case. So I would imagine it's some good sleep material.
Right. It's not the most riveting 3 hours of your life. So the court's in break right now, and then it says closing arguments to resume. So usually they're done by now. They're taking a break, and they're coming back today? Are they all of a sudden in a hurry?
I think they'd like to get it to the jury tomorrow. I mean, I don't know that I would characterize it necessarily as hurrying, but I think judge wants to turn the jury loose tonight and tell them, okay, deliberations start at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I think that's the goal here, that they want to get this case to them. And I do think there's a bit of a push to kind of get that done. Now, what they don't want to do is you don't want to rush a verdict, right? And that might be why we waited until after the holiday. You want to avoid what they call 5 o'clock magic. 5 o'clock magic is where the judge gives the jury the case at 4:01 p.m. and at 4:49, we've got a verdict. And it's like, well, okay, somebody's life is kind of on the line here, and we've spent the last 5 days bashing our head in about this. And just because the jury didn't want to come back and miss another week of work or another day of work, they're going to rush a verdict. So you want to be pretty predictable when it comes to dealing with the jury. And you want to let them know, look, we will do everything we can do to get you this case tomorrow, but starting tomorrow, plan on blocking off a lot of time here because we're not done, and we're not done until we're done.
Well, another piece of breaking news comes from one of Trump's other trials. A judge slapped down Jack Smith's request for a gag order on Trump. In that case, what does that mean to us here?
Means we can have less contempt hearings. Although I think Trump found an end around. You see he hasn't had any contempt issues in the last 2 or 3 weeks of this trial. He's had a lot of his surrogates who've come and kind of done this. I think we talked about it, James. I think the judge really regrets having put that gag order on Trump because it turns into this power struggle. Because, okay, Trump has kind of violated it, or has he? And it's a real paper cut violation, right? And so now the judge is in this position of, okay, now I got to throw you in jail. I don't want to do that because that screws everything, and you're going to do a bunch of fundraising off of it, and we could get a mistrial. And so the judge is almost the judge almost kind of paints himself in a corner. So I think you're obviously going to get a lot less of that in that case with the gag order. But I don't know. I think we were all kind of beaten to death by that thing anyway, by the gag order. And Trump is $8,000 poorer or $10,000 poorer than he was, which, I mean.
Yeah, look, we're sick of it. I think there's about 30-40% of America that absolutely loved it. But all right, well, thank you, Jeremy Rosenthal, for sharing your legal expertise on The James Show again. You can find him at texasdefensefirm.com.
You got it, man. And I'm going to send my investigator to give you a call on how to capture odors in the bathroom, and we'll get you offline.
Thank you very much, because that guy, I got used to working from home. I have a home studio for radio, and I was there for like 8 years. And when you have to come back into an office setting, that's the first thing. That's the first thing that just, you're like, oh, I already miss home so bad. And that's the bathroom situation. It's the worst. Number 2 is the kitchen. Number 1, bathroom. It's worse than you remember. If you've ever taken a break from it and you have to come back, it is worse than you remember. All right, if you have any comments on what's going on with the Trump trial, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Robert Deniro spoke outside of Trump's trial. I'll play you some of that audio, but I have a different take than you may think. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So outside of Donald Trump's court, there's always been a mini circus going on. There's been supporters, there's been protesters, there's been police, there's been actors, there's been politicians. The president is expected to have some words, but the guy that made some headlines recently. Robert Deniro, he went up there. I believe this was yesterday. Was this yesterday or day before yesterday? It all kinds of runs together. But Robert De Niro was outside of Trump's trial. Before we get to the content of what he said, because, well, you know what he's going to say. Trump's evil. We got it. He's Hitler. He's more Hitler than any Hitler's ever Hitlered before. You forget how short this guy is. When he's in movies, he looks like a normal-sized dude. But when he is on the street in these unplanned, just it looks like B-roll moments, so we're just casually catching him candidly. Nice alliteration there. You forget, what is this guy, like 5'4"? There's and I knew that he was short before because it was passed around years ago. There's pictures of Robert De Niro who's walking around town by himself, no paparazzi, no date, no friends or nothing, but he's wearing these gigantic soled shoes like he's a goth kid going to a Fall Out Boy concert or something. And it's funny like that. It's funny to think that this guy that you look up to, this guy who's been part of, the cultural landscape for 40 something years, maybe has a little bit of a complex about his size. There's nothing wrong with being short. You didn't do anything wrong if you're short, but if you're going to be wearing shoes that have the soles of them that's 2 inches at least tall, and it's just regular black dress shoes, and you're not around anybody, you're not even on a date, you're not trying to impress anybody, it tells me you have an insecure streak. Why would Robert De Niro feel insecure? I don't know. I've met a lot of these famous people, and the insecurity does not go away just because you become rich and famous. But Robert De Niro is someone that you've seen be political before, and it's never nice. He's never on your side. Robert De Niro came out famously at the Tony Awards in 2018. He was going to be a presenter, or he was a presenter, and he said F Trump. Remember that?
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
Yay! F the president. Isn't that great? Yes, the adults are back in charge now. We're not like those evil, hate-filled bigots on the other side. You mean the ones that you just F them? Yeah, those. Listen to how long they cheer for that. F Trump. 30 seconds of applause at least.
It's no longer down with Trump, it's Trump.
So you're not going to be surprised when he comes out and he talks about how Trump needs to go to jail and it's bad for America. In fact, it's the worst thing ever. And okay, look, we don't put much stock in actors' opinions anyway. But when you have an actor like a Robert De Niro, who's born and raised in New York City, a solidly blue bubble, never really got to see the outside world or, spend much time in it. And then he spends his adult life in showbiz. You don't expect him to have, the full complement of the human experience in America. You're not surprised when he believes what he's told on TV, when he's told these horrible things about flyover country. He probably thinks Deliverance is a documentary. But Robert De Niro comes out and he cusses Trump. Sounds like a bad guy. However, when you cuss him back, he's no longer the only bad guy. And so I have a problem. There was a guy when De Niro was done yesterday and was walking off back to his fleet of SUVs or wherever he was going. There's a guy in a MAGA hat, has his phone out and his video in the situation, and it's just being mean to him. Check this out. I don't like this part.
Democrats, you are gangsters. You are gangsters. You're washed up. You're a little punk. You're a softy. You're a nobody. Your movies suck. You're trash. You're trash. You're done.
You're a softy. You're nobody. Your movies suck. You're trash. Why is it that if you disagree, I'm not saying you, but so many people, if you disagree with someone politically, they're horrible people? Is it not possible that Robert De Niro made a whole lot of great movies? He just happens to have a political opinion that's different than yours, sir? It's something that Trump does that kind of grates on my nerves. Everyone who criticizes him, they're the worst. They're washed up. There's never a good actor who said anything negative about him. There's never because look, he's washed up. He's washed up. He's recently had hits. He's not trash. This is a guy who's been just kicking butt up and down Hollywood through the Taxi Driver to Goodfellas to the Irishman, all that stuff. I mean, this guy has a record of success. He is not a failure. He is not a bad actor. He is not trash. He is not washed up. Why is it? I don't get this. I don't have that gene. And I think most people don't. But it's these really partisan people who act like their preferred political party is their favorite sports franchise. It makes sense when you see someone that's wearing a Philadelphia Eagles jersey. You're like, oh, that guy sucks. Because we all agree that it's just in fun. It's just a game. We're talking about football. We're not talking about that actual human being. But that's not what politics is. If you have someone on the other side of the political aisle and you're calling them, oh, they're a Nazi, or you're washed up, you're just hating on that actual person. And when you do that, right there at the beginning of that clip, you heard the audio cut out whenever they were throwing every audio that was edited there was the F word, by the way. But it started with Robert De Niro going F you to the guy in the MAGA hat who was yelling at him and you didn't know what he was saying yet. And if the guy had been nice, the guy in the MAGA hat had been nice, it was like, hey, I strongly disagree. Trump 2024, Trump's going to win. You're wrong about Trump. And he was positive. Third parties looking at this, people who could be influenced looking at this exchange would think, well, Robert De Niro's the bad guy and this guy's clearly the nice guy. But when you start throwing F-bombs and the insults back at him, now you both jerks. Now you had a chance to win people over. You had a chance to prove that you were the mature one that was not all histrionic and sensational and emotional. You were logical and reserved and methodical. Nope, you threw that chance out the water. Now you're both just a bunch of grown men having a very immature and vulgar hissy fit. Don't be that guy. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, look, political discourse has gotten a little more coarse. COARSE. And I think it's gone too far. I think we all need to drop the personal attacks, try and focus on the principles. And whenever I bring this up, usually get laughed out of the room. Like, Parker, we can't be nice to each other. I hate the other side. Gary in Irving, you're on The James Show. What do you think?
Hi, James. I enjoy your show, but I have a question. So, and I think I might agree with you. You might agree with me. So, how is Robert De Niro saying F Trump any different than the whole theme of F Joe Biden whenever Joe Biden got elected?
It's not really that different. It is coarse, ad hominem, F-bomb attack. I mean, really the only difference is Trump said it on stage at, the Tony Awards when he was in a national broadcast. So, I mean, he's breaking some FCC violations or some decency issues there versus, people can be as vulgar as they want if they're not in a broadcast setting. But the difference is pretty minuscule. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's and I don't like Joe Biden at all. Can't stand his policies. But I even said back then it's disrespectful because at the end of the day, he's still our president. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's disrespectful, but we're also in America that's built on disrespect for the powers that be. If there's the guy running the country, I think our founding fathers were saying not nice things about King George III back in the day. So it's not like it's un-American or beyond the pale to say negative things about our leader. But yeah, it's not that different. And I really think, especially in an interpersonal setting, where if it's like a crowd that's just kind of chanting and they're all having some sort of like a sports moment is what's going on, versus you have a chance for a guy that gets to meet Robert De Niro, even if it's just sort of like a face-to-face, few seconds acquaintance. This is the exchange you're going to have. I just couldn't imagine doing that. I couldn't imagine pretending to not like Robert De Niro and pretending to not like his movies and like his work and like his art that I've been appreciating for decades and decades and decades just because he said some negative things about the guy I plan to vote for. I don't have that mindset. And for me, it seems counterproductive. I may make that guy feel good at the time, but there may be some people who are kind of on the fence about being open to Donald Trump and that side of the aisle, and he might have just ruined it.
Possibly.
Yeah. So look, if someone's rude to you and you're nice back, independent third parties watching this will know who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, and don't give them an excuse to think you're the bad guy. Play the game. Let's go to Chris in Haltom City. You're on 820 AM, now 93.3 FM WBAP. What do you think, Chris? Chris, you with me?
Yeah, I'm right there.
Okay, go ahead. What do you think? You're on the James Show.
Oh, hey, privileged to be here. Thank you very much. I listen to your show every day. Love it. Absolutely brilliant. I like what you have to say. But the one thing that I've noticed that people always like to battle over is the basics. It's the basics of life, the basics of being an American. And what we are all, it's not entitled to, it's what we all, as real Americans, strive and fight for. It's what we want to be, free. We just want to be able to live our lives, no matter the discourse or anything or the BS that comes between it. Most Americans love the fact that we are able to have that discourse, that argument, that debate. Most Americans love that. They love the fact that we are able to debate each other freely. And for some reason, that has become so skewed and so twisted and distorted and contorted by politicians, by movie stars, by musicians, by people that seem to think that they have power, that it's almost confusing as to what we should look at as role models, idols, whatever it may be, model figures. And that's where it's so confusing.
Well, that comes from when I can tell you exactly when the discourse leaves the tracks is when you introduce emotion. And that is one thing that has been shown for every human population to do something irrational. You have to get them emotional. You either have to get them sad or excited or scared.
That always gets them in a way that makes them focus on something other than reality.
Yeah, that and once you mix that emotion with the basic cognitive dissonance, the difference between what you're expecting in your head for the world to produce and what the world actually produces, mix that with emotion, and then you get people who are genuinely scared and lashing out because they don't see you as trying to explain to them why Trump isn't Hitler. They see you as, oh my God, here is somebody defending Hitler. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's how World War II started. That's how all this kind of crazy crap starts, always. Because people don't want to look at the reality. They want to look at the feelings. They want to look at the crap and the BS that does not explain reality as it stands this day, today, right now at this minute. What is going to cause the negative 10 minutes from now?
Well,
they don't want to look at that.
And so
they just want to look at how they feel right now at this second.
Yes.
And that isn't going to help them in 10 hours, in 10 months, in 10 years. That isn't going to help them.
But yeah, and look, one of the ways this manifests itself, and I bet you'll agree with this, thank you for calling, Chris, is once you separate the emotion and you separate the human being that you're being trained to hate, and I'll even take it from the right-wing side of the complaint here. I used to tell my mother-in-law, your hatred from Obama is not doing you any good. You should not be opposing Obama's policy because he's wrong or he's a communist or he's an idiot or he hates this country. Because when they were doing No Child Left Behind or Race to the Top or whichever one was Obama's, the problem wasn't fighting against Common Core and fighting against Obama's preferred educational plan. The real fight was, how about we just get rid of the Department of Education so we don't have to deal with this anymore? And even if you do stop them, 15 years ago when Obama was in office, you still left that apparatus up. You didn't have the foresight to take down the Department of Education because now we're just going to have to fight this battle again. One of the reasons why the federal government still had the influence to close our schools during COVID is because we left all of those strings of funding going back and forth between the Department of Education. So if the feds say, well, we think you should close your schools, and the local school says, well, I don't think we should close, we're not scared of your silly virus talk, they can say, well, we're going to pull the funding for all your free lunches and you're going to be $20,000 in the hole next month. Well, You lost. You gave up that sovereignty. If you would have fought the structural policy foundation instead of the figurehead man standing on top of it, you'd never have to fight that battle again, much less lose it. 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Back on The James Show, Han von Spakowski from the Heritage Foundation. Closing arguments have begun in the Trump trial in New York. Prosecution is doing their closing arguments now. I imagine the defense is after that. And so, first things first, how close are we to being done with this thing, Hans?
Well, there's no telling. I mean, I think the closing statements are not going to go beyond today. But then what will happen is the judge will give his instructions to the jury, and they will get the case, I would suspect, tomorrow. But look, any lawyer will tell you, juries are totally unpredictable. They could come back in an hour. They could come back in a week. They could come back 2 weeks. There's no telling how long it will take them to make a decision. It depends on what kind of differences of opinion there are inside the jury room between the different jurors.
Yeah, I have I have a terrible track record of guessing how long juries will take. I am kind of partial to the idea that even if the juries are willing to stay overnight, they're less willing to stay over a weekend. And that would put a timetable, like even if they get done and they start deliberating tomorrow, maybe they could have an answer Friday.
That is very possible. What I'm hoping happens, and look, this is what the defense closing statements today have been basically that the prosecution hasn't proved their case. And I have to tell you, I think they are absolutely correct about that. But the issue is the political bias of the jurors going to prevent them from making an objective decision? And if we were in some other part of the country, I actually think the jury would come back in an hour and say, there's no case here. But, Alvin Bragg brought what I consider to be a bogus prosecution in Manhattan because he just assumed a Manhattan jury would be so politically biased that they would convict Donald Trump despite the facts and the law. And I guess, this is an important case for Donald Trump, but this case is also a real test of the Manhattan justice system, the New York justice system, because experts on both sides, liberal and conservative, have been saying that this really is not a real case, that it's a frivolous case.
Well, look, the goal for some people and some of my friends, the thing they want to see more than anything else is this guy be put in handcuffs and taken and put in a jail cell. Is that going to happen even if he's found guilty, or do we still have to go through like a sentencing phase, or maybe he's going to get something that doesn't require jail time? I mean, what's the likelihood that their dream will come true?
Well, look, Judge Merchan, the judge in this case, has shown his partisan bias throughout the entire case. The fact that he's even on the case, instead of recusing himself, given that his daughter has a financial interest as a Democratic political consultant in the outcome, shows you how biased he is. Look, they charged him, Donald Trump, with 34 felonies. He could be convicted and put in jail for many, many years. And I seriously doubt that if the jury comes back and finds him guilty, there's no way. Judge Merchan is probably going to get secret joy in being able to sentence Donald Trump to jail. Remember, this is a judge who was already cautioned a year or so ago by the Judicial Commission, Ethics Commission in New York for improperly making political contributions to Democratic candidates, which judges aren't allowed to do. So that's the kind of judge you have on this case.
I don't think I knew that story. Can you give me like the 30-second wrap up on that?
Yes. He was giving political contributions to Democratic candidates, I think including the Biden campaign. And judges, that is strictly forbidden by the ethics rules governing New York judges. The New York Ethics Commission sent him what they call a caution letter telling him that this was improper and it shouldn't happen again. But that tells you a lot, I think, about this judge, not only his political views, but the fact that he was willing to violate state ethics rules to make these political contributions.
All right. Well, maybe the rest of us should hear that story. All right. Thank you very much for sharing. Hans von Spikowski from the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for being on the James Show again.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, your thoughts, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. I have friends whose greatest wish in life is to see that man go to prison. There have been a pretty significant chunk of this population that has just been trained and groomed and fed a steady diet of hatred for this guy that they can't see straight. The only question is how many of those people are in that jury box right now. Coming up next, I have some details on Election Day. Yeah, today's Election Day. Probably hadn't heard about that. Well, I'll get you caught up and just remind you, I know you're busy now, but if you can make it to the polls before the end of the day, there's some pretty important stuff that's on the ballot for today. That's next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.